All right, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of the Resource Insider podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Keech from Resource Insider, and I'm a partner as well at Inventic Capital. And today we are sitting down with a guest that I've been looking forward to talking to for some time now. He is different than the regular guests we have here on Resource Insider, which tend to be mining executives or perhaps professional investors in the mining space. He is a mining commentator, or I should probably say a precious metals and commodities commentator, and he's really taken, I would say, the mining social media world and by storm over the last several months. So I've been looking forward to talking to him. I think he's got a very interesting story, so we'll get right into it. Jake Ducey, how are you today?
Hey man, hard to complain. Avino Silver Mines was up 145% at the open today. Everything's looking pretty good, so it's an exciting time.
So, Jake, I think I did a very poor job of introducing you and what you do. So, if you could give us the sort of 30,000 foot view of what your job is and what your role is, can you explain it better than I just did?
All right, cool. All right, so it's always a weird one because if you Google my name, you see stuff totally unrelated. So here's the nutshell story for everyone listening, right? Like everyone listening that's interested in precious metals, commodities, things like that. We've all had our own wake up morning or wake up moment, and yours is different than mine. But mine was I was a freshman in college, grew up in SoCal, just traditional, go to school, study business, and go sell something for somebody afterwards when you get your degree. And it was Thanksgiving break, freshman year of college. My dad just like got red pilled and found out how the whole economic system worked. His hair was straight up in the air and he looked all crazy. And he's like, "Come here." And he shows me how the whole monetary system worked. And then I went back to economics class and I asked my teacher why we couldn't audit the Federal Reserve. And this was 2010, 2011. And he told me to shut up and memorize my textbook. I got a big fight with him in class and everyone in my class wanted me to shut up. And so I decided to drop out of college, backpacked around the world. I was really angry about what was happening in the world economically, kind of afraid that we'd get to a moment in time similar to what we're in right now, where we basically have a global debt bubble that and fiat currency system that could explode or hyperinflate, one or the other. And so I dropped out. I got into personal development, backpacked around the world. I ended up writing a book about it. The first line begins in economics class, me asking my teacher why we can't audit the Federal Reserve. And it ends with 14-day silent meditation in Thailand. Travel book, funny, inspirational. And no one would publish, self-published it at 21, sold it out of the trunk of my car. I sold 20,000 copies out of the trunk of my car. So Penguin Random House, a big publisher, gave me a couple book deals, started, building a pretty successful career, speaking 600 high school college talks, went online. My main YouTube channel's got 600,000 subscribers, millions and millions of website visits. So we built a, very successful business in the personal development industry. Never spent any of my money because I didn't trust, the whole monetary system. So started buying a bunch of precious metals and gold and bringing me all back to that. And what really happened is, as I started building, a rather substantial portfolio, I started paying everyone for consulting, David Morgan and all these people. And I told him, I said, "Look, I know how YouTube works. You should be utilizing YouTube and social media. Like, what are all you old people doing?" And I'd always tell him, and he wouldn't do it. And then when the lockdowns happened, I said, "Screw it, I'll do it." And so I started this channel, I Love Prosperity, in April. Last 28 days, 1.6 million views, 22 million minutes watched. We got like 75,000 subscribers in 8 months. Mark Cuban's been on, Jim Rogers, Jim Rickards, everybody. And so that's kind of what brought me around to it. I didn't know it was going to blow up like this, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay, there's a ton of shit there that I want to unpack right now. So the first question that comes to mind is, when you say you sell 20,000 copies out of the trunk of your car, what does that actually look like? Are you driving around to college campuses and giving talks and selling books, or are you standing on the side of the road on a soapbox? Like, how does one actually go?
It was more the soapbox one, and no one would let me speak back then. So I like everything. I mean, I have photos of me. I found a different farmer's market every day of the week, and I would go sell my book. You know, I had a little shitty book stand next to the person that sold kale, and I would stop people on the way and I would sell my book. You know, hey, do you like inspirational books? And I'd sell, I mean, I'm like, you know, it's $10. If you don't have $10, give me one of your shoes. I'll resell your shoe on eBay. It was like anything, you know? And so I rented tables at the center of college campuses, student center, and $25 for a day. And I would stop kids on the way to class, sell my books. And, you know, it went from 200 to 500 to 1,000. And then, you know, I got a gig here and I'd ask them to buy this many books, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And the next thing I know, I did a TEDx talk. And the next thing I knew, you know, I had a book agent, and he said, wow, I think we could probably get you a book deal. And that was kind of how it happened, was just really grassroots. You know, I didn't know anything about the internet then either.
Yeah. So, I mean, your early message, from what I can tell, reading online, looking at some of your videos, is really surrounding, you know, you said self-help, but sort of the power of positive thinking and manifestation. Am I getting that right?
Well, so let me tell you why I'm into that. All right. So I believe, look, I have a very different view than most people in the world. I believe that the central banking system, which was created in 1913, which it was actually created in order to create a global, ultimately a communist enslavement system. Central banking is a tenet of communism. They have central planning and news. They've been able to use fiat currency to buy everything, buy the whole stock market, create a wealth gap, enslave the whole population. And I think it goes for a lot further back than that. And then you look at modern day, there was an individual named Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. So Sigmund Freud, obviously the father of, you know, modern psychology and whatnot. And I had a lot of interesting discoveries about the subconscious, essentially the unconscious. So his nephew took his uncle's discoveries about the unconscious and went and sold it to basically to the banking system, and said, look, we could basically manipulate, and essentially we could brainwash everybody. And he was the creator of PR. There's a 10-part series of him online. And it was a big deal. Sigmund Freud hated it. He had a huge falling out with his nephew. And he basically took the powers of the mind for evil. And these things have been known long before that. There's always been a divide and conquer, and the elites have always had certain knowledge of consciousness in the mind. But I think this is what's basically plugged us into this matrix, is this modern system. You know, these advertisers, they know how the mind works. They know that a human being is 95% unconscious. The subconscious mind, sub means below, if somebody doesn't know, so below conscious, that's responsible for 95% of every thought, feeling, and action that you take. So the majority of people, we already know that. We're robots. We are literally robots. And we are programmed by the media, by the ruling elites. And I've been back in the day, arrested, protesting, and things like that. And I used to think that was the answer. And then I realized that the real answer is actually in the mind. More than you should buy gold, more than you should buy silver, more than cobalt stocks are going to go up by 10,000%. If we want to change the world, we have to wake up. The outside world is a reflection of our own level of consciousness and our own development. Thus, we have psychopathic politicians leading us, and people are so docile, they don't care. And so I became infatuated with the mind. And I said, well, if they lied about the whole financial system, they're obviously lying about the nature of reality, the power of our mind. And so that's what's really attracted me. I think most people believe at the core, most people believe they aren't as smart as other people. Steve Jobs says the world was built by people no smarter than you, and you can mold it, shape it, change it however you want. Most people are controlled by old childhood programming. They believe they can't make much money. They believe they're not that smart. They believe they're unworthy of whatever it is, success, love. And so we have this society that's so controlled by unconscious mechanisms. And that's been my focus the last 10 years, is helping educate people on the power of their mind.
So did this kind of start, I guess, as a mission maybe to help reprogram yourself, your own mind, your own thinking? Am I right in that?
Yeah, that's how it started. What happened was, it was all about the economic and banking system. I dropped out. I wrote this book. And what happened was I started learning all this. And there's a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, I have declassified documents from the CIA through the Freedom of Information Act. They've done all types of studies on this. That's what MK Ultra was about. It was about basically using psychedelic drugs to get people out of their conscious minds so that they could reprogram the subconscious. And so there's a lot of declassified CIA documents on this. This isn't just New Age. But what got me into it was when I learned all this stuff and I decided that I was going to write this book, and 25 publishing companies said no, and everyone said I'm an idiot. No one's going to listen to me, and you're 20 years old, you moron. And so I learned all this about the mind, and I said, well, if this is true, then I should theoretically be able to program myself to become a global influencer, multimillionaire, very successful at whatever. And so I started creating my own hypnosis tracks when I was 20. I listened to them all day, all the time in the shower.
So would you would say things that you wanted to believe and then play it back to you?
I told myself
to program into your subconscious mind.
Yeah, I told myself that I was a multimillionaire, and we have a multi-million-dollar business. I mean, everything happened the way that I programmed it to in my 20s. And I think at the core, it started from that. Beside everyone, every publishing company and everyone told me no, but I built my own. It's like the mind works kind of, I like the analogy of a computer software system. So most of us are running on Windows 98. It's 2021. We have this old crappy software, these old terrible beliefs. And we also, for the most part, are taught to be subservient to outside figures. So we accept what other people said. A big publishing company says, Jake, you can't do it. And I say, well, you're probably right. What am I? I'm 20. I'm an idiot. And so I updated my software. I wrote my own code. I deleted my viruses. And so it changed my life, and that's kind of been my mission the last, 8-9 years. And more recently, I realized that there was a market to serve in this kind of broader finance niche. And that's what allowed me to enter that more recently.
So I have a question about that, because positivity, or not saying this right, but like the use of mantras has been around for a long time. But I feel like there's one thing to hear something or one thing to say something, and then there's one thing to believe something, right? And I feel like for those things to work, even if they're the old basic ones, like every day and every way I'm getting better and better, things like that, you have to actually program your mind to believe that. Do you have any advice for people, or
you have to have
how do you go from hearing to believing?
You have to have an emotional response to something. One of the other cool things about our modern world, there's a lot of things we can complain about our modern world, but one of the cool things is, all the studies on the brain. So there's something in neuroscience. It's called Hebb's Law, Hebbs, Hebb's Law. So Hebb's Law says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. So basically your brain, and there's a lot to do with neuroplasticity. So basically every time you have a dominant emotion, whether it's trauma, whether it's something positive, and you just are now living, in this delusional reality where your life's going to change as an entrepreneur and you're building your business, whereas the other people, are so afraid all the time they're going to fail. You activate cells in your brain. And when you do it regularly, you activate Hebb's Law, which says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. So what has to happen is emotions. You have to get emotionally involved with an idea of any sorts, right? In order to even take it seriously, such as asking somebody out. Right? Like you see someone that you find attractive in the coffee shop, most people's emotions talk themselves out of it. And the few that do are like, all right, let's go. And so in the most basic way, it does that. But in the most sophisticated way, we have to get emotionally involved with things. I built delusional pictures in my mind as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old dropout that I was a multimillionaire, inspiring millions of people all over the world. You have to be a little bit delusional to believe that something different can occur. And I think it has to do with turning the outside noise down and allowing yourself to get emotionally involved in a future picture. That's what a visionary is. It's someone who lives on a vision.
So for someone that's interested in trying this, does it matter which emotion you start with? Does it, should it be a loving emotion? Should it be an angry, motivated emotion? If you want to convince yourself you're a billionaire or a millionaire and you're going to go out and do this,
well, I'm not sure
where
if it
do you
would help
start
to get mad at yourself. So I would probably say the opposite. Right? Like you can't just sit there for 24 hours a day and do nothing, right? But why is it that a lot of people work 18 hours a day and they're never rich? It's obviously not hard work alone. So, I mean, otherwise the garbage guy would be the richest guy in the world, right? I mean, that's a really hard job. They work a lot more hours than I do, and they work a lot more hours than a lot of millionaires. And so, for me, I think it starts with understanding what you want. I think if you ask 99 out of 100 people, 95 out of 100 people, the majority of people don't even know what they want. And it's either because they've never been taught to consciously set their own goals, whether it be a financial goal, a career goal, or just generally, what do they want out of their life? They've never asked themselves that question. And I think it comes down to a lot of things, the fear of failure. And then also we're just taught to be sheep and follow what everyone does. So I think a great way to begin is to actually ask ourselves, like, do I have a clearly defined goal? I mean, and I think I did a poll on Twitter a couple weeks ago. And my audience on Twitter is almost entirely investors. And so I asked them on Twitter and I said, do you have clearly defined financial goals for 2021? 70% of people said no. That's insane. I mean, what are you doing? And so I think that's a great place to start. How much money do you want to earn a year? How much money do you want to earn a month? I'm not sure if saying you're going to be a billionaire next week is a very good idea, but I mean, look, if you've got a great idea, maybe, but I think starting with clearly defined and targetable goals. The point of a goal is a target. And so I think starting there is a great place to begin and build that picture of what you want your life to look like. Most people are so controlled by their environment that their thinking is controlled by it as well. They can only think what they're capable of financially based off of what they've seen on their tax returns for 10 years. And, so it takes a certain amount of detaching from your reality. And so I think that's a great place to begin. Like, what do you actually want? I mean, I have tons of goals. I write them all down. And I think that it's a great and empowering way to live our lives. Mike, we talked about Mike, before our call, and you guys share an office together. And for those that don't know, Mike, CEO of Vancouver Silver Company, he read the book. I believe he said he actually read the book Think and Grow Rich, and he decided in his early 20s that he was going to be a millionaire before he turned 30. And he wrote it on a piece of paper and he built this whole picture for his life. And he did. He sold his first company for $15 million when he was 29 years old. And every time I meet very successful mentors and older people, they all have this clear vision. And so I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. And for people listening, that's Mike Connor, the CEO of Visual Resources. So he sold privately a successful cobalt company, and now he's the CEO of a very successful silver company. And in my opinion, he's probably just getting started in his career. He's in his early 30s, and he's certainly someone to watch over the coming cycle. We talked a little bit about, or you talked a little bit about, the idea that so much of what people think is being manipulated, right, by advertising and public relations and governments and the banking system. Do you think this is part of the reason why people have such a hard time for defining a clear goal for themselves, because they're too busy maybe thinking what they're being told to think, and they're not able to pull themselves out of that and define something that will, that actually works for them, or doing this or making this amount of money? Is that where you'd lay the blame on this?
I think in part, I don't like to ever blame a fraudulent central banking system for why I'm broke, or a corrupt pharmaceutical industry for why I'm unhappy, because you give up your power to change it. I think at the end of the day, I think we just got to be able to take a step back and not be afraid too. I mean, it definitely plays a huge role in it. Absolutely. But I think that we need to wake up now. I mean, we're seeing with all this like GameStop, Reddit stuff, we're seeing with the silver stuff, people are just starting to wake up more, I feel like. And, the way that we really change the world is to take responsibility for our own lives. And I believe that from my core. And so I think it has to do also with facing our own fears of inadequacy, our own fears of childhood. Or maybe your parents hated rich people. Maybe your parents got divorced over money. And so you're psychologically have an association with money as bad, right? Like whatever it is, we don't need to go through an 18-hour hypnotic previous life regression. All we need to do, I think, is just say, hey, look, it's time to wake up. I can't make $60,000 a year. I can't make 40K a year again. I can't make 150K a year again. The cost of living is going up. I'm reaching a fragment of my potential. Even if you make 250 grand, can you make $1 million? And if it's not about the money and you find a bigger why and it's for your family's freedom and all these things, then I think, we can attach to that and possibilities start opening up. That's what I believe.
So you did what you recommended to all these sort of well-known letter writers and market commentators to do, to take to YouTube, to start making videos on these things. I first saw your work months ago when I think you interviewed Rick Rule for one of the first times, and I started listening to everything you were doing. Can you give people an overview of sort of where you're putting your money, where you see the potential for sort of for investors that are new to this space to start paying attention, to start allocating capital?
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, on my own physical silver and gold, that to me isn't an investment. It's my savings. I don't store a lot of fiat currency. That's my savings. I started buying silver at $17, and I'm probably 70-30, 65-35 in favor of silver. And I probably have 25% of my total net worth in physical metals. I know that's high to a lot of people, but I believe that we live in a fraudulent banking system that can't go on forever. And so that's my start. Outside of that, I built, over this last year, a reasonable portfolio, 7-figure portfolio that focuses primarily on silver miners, silver junior miners, and uranium. I did about 118% last year. I know a lot of people did a lot better because I bought more at the lows. I was a little too afraid, but my focus is primarily on silver. I don't really own any gold stocks. Silver is, even after today, even if you called silver $30 right now after this run, which is probably not anymore, it's probably back at 28. It's basically 50% off the all-time highs. Gold's basically at all-time highs. Bitcoin's past all-time highs. There's all the Tesla's past all-time highs. Just logically, the asymmetrical risk to reward makes the most sense to me for silver. It's historically price manipulated, undervalued, and there's obviously a lot of the mechanics that people like Mike can go into more on the actual supply and demand of it. So I find silver very attractive. The uranium thesis. I started buying a lot of uranium in March and April and May. The price of uranium, as Rick Rule said, either the lights go out or the price is going to go up. I have cobalt, nickel, and other battery metals as well. And I'm pretty much focused. I pretty much focus only on juniors. I guess someone would call them penny stocks. That's pretty much where most of my money is, because I think it's just the downside risk is, barring another market crash, is just, I think, astronomically high for, having a 10x return potentially in a portfolio built around small commodity based and metals based mining stocks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're kind of preaching to the choir on this one, man. That's basically exactly what we've done at Resource Insider over the last couple of years. Particularly the last year, we've been building out a silver portfolio. Vizsla Resources was one of the first things we invested in at 40 cents pre-discovery. And
awesome.
Up until last week, we just did a financing into Arcana Silver at $1. I think they hit $1.13 today, the full warrants. Silver's really interestingly, I think, we look at probably 30, 40 different deals every week at Resource Insider, and silver's the area where I'm still seeing over and over again really good deals, really cheap prices. We talk about this a lot, and I get a lot of investors asking me, have I missed the chance to allocate to precious metals? Have I missed the boat? Has it run? And you put a good point that gold's trading near all-time highs. I don't think we've missed the boat by any means, but certainly gold's at a way different place than it was even a year ago. Silver has barely moved at all. It has, yes, doubled from where it was in late 2019, but like you said, that's the only thing I can think of in the world right now that is so obviously undervalued, trading at half of historic highs when everything else is pushing the limit. It's just a unique and really, really, I think, incredible opportunity for people who want to diversify, who want to maybe take some money out of Bitcoin or some of the other things and put it somewhere that still has a lot to run. What do you think about this silver squeeze going on right now?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, a lot of these stocks are still under where they were in August. I think Vizsla still was at like $1.70 in August. It's
Yeah.
still way below that. And so,
Well, at their high, they hit 250 Canadian. They're
oh,
at
they
about a
did.
dollar
Okay.
70 now. So like right after the discovery, they went crazy and ran. But
Okay.
that damn deposit keeps getting better and better and better, and they've still dropped off. So we sold a bit at 250, and we still hold more than half our position right now. And I'm pretty pumped on what those guys are putting together down
Yeah,
there.
so there's a lot of those, right, that are still, I mean, just compared to August highs are below value. Attractive supply demand situation. Uranium's the same way. Costs about $60 a pound to including finance to get the necessary uranium out of the ground to meet the 200 million plus pound per year demand. It's down at 30, so that's interesting to me too. But on the
Mm-hmm.
silver squeeze. First of all, I'd say to me, I almost wonder if there's a portion of it that is intentional disinformation. I mean, why would you do a silver short squeeze by buying SLV? I mean, it's a fraud, right? Like, come on, if for those that don't know, I mean, it's JP Morgan's a custodian. They claim they had 37 tons of silver that they brought in on Friday. I mean, give me a break. How do you even ship 37 tons of silver in one day? And I mean, they're just filling it up with paper. And so I don't like that. I mean, even if this isn't happening, we are already in the midst of a silver squeeze. I mean, I was on the phone with my dealer 2 weeks ago, who's become a good friend. And he's like, dude, I can't even get any. He's like, it's so tight. And this was before this happened. And then you had SD Bullion went on, I think Bloomberg today or yesterday, the CEO. And that's for those that don't know, one of the biggest Canadian USA type of online companies. And he said normally on a Saturday, I think he said they normally sell 50 million ounces on a Saturday, and they sold 1 million, or they normally sell 50,000. I'm sorry. They normally sell 50,000 ounces on a Saturday. And he said they sold 1 million. I mean, there's
What?
clear. Yeah. I retweeted the screenshot of the data that he posted. I could be butchering those exact numbers, but it was about a 15x increase on the math. And so, there's not that much silver. There was only 760 million mined ounces in 2020. That's about as low as it was since 2011. Industry's increasing. All the Democrats have control, and they want to put a Tesla charging station in your bathroom. And so like, where are you going to get all the silver for like all this stuff? And so it's interesting. There's obviously a huge, I mean, retail locations have lines out the building. A lot of them, especially in America, probably in Vancouver right now.
And they're selling out too. They're selling out. A friend of mine is a broker, a silver dealer in Alberta, and they're out. They're totally out at any price.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, man. I mean, if this can, I expect a bunch of naked short selling to happen. Who knows? I mean, I don't know if you've done much research on the Basel III, on the International Bank of Settlements new law that's coming in June. It's pretty interesting. Andrew Maguire talks a lot about it. I wonder if some of this is disinformation to allow the price of metals to rise. I don't know what, we don't know, but it is very clear that it is, there is a lot of retail buyers that are coming after physical silver. I had David Morgan on yesterday. He said he's called Eric a couple times, Eric Sprott, and said, look, this is your time to get in here. Whether it's Eric or somebody else, you got to think some big boys are saying, look, we got a bunch of fire cover right now. Let's go in and pull 50 million ounces off. David said if we pull 150 million ounces off, a 150 to 300 million, there'll be fireworks. And so, I mean, it seems like that's something that could really happen. I mean, that's
what
not
does
that
David
far-fetched.
think fireworks looks like? Does it look like $30 silver? Is it $100 silver?
It depends. I think it would depend on, and David's been in this for so long that David, David never tries to get too excited anymore. But look, I mean, I guess it depends on what degree the paper market goes down. I mean, does it get so bad? Could it get so bad eventually that some of these more of these markets shut down? If that happened, I mean, you've seen inflation adjusted prices for silver. I mean, who knows what the price of silver is, but I think saying that long term it's only going to go to 50, I mean, I just can't see that. I think it's going way past that. David said be patient, but I mean, look, the industrial demand, I mean, all this stuff, it's astronomical. I mean, they estimate a 350% increase in needed silver to meet the industrial and electric vehicle and all that craze. I mean, where is it coming from? It's like,
yeah, it's crazy. We just we do a weekly report for members, and one of our portfolio companies, silver company called Bunker Hill out of Idaho, past producing mine. They did a big financing earlier this year, which we participated in, or rather late last year. And they had a full warrant. So what happens when you have a full warrant? I think it was a 3-year warrant. They had a sell-off when the stock came free trading. They dropped like, I don't know, 30, 40%. And some of our members were asking me about this. What are we going to do? We're still up on the investment, but I said, anyone selling silver right now is a bloody idiot. Like, we're not here to make a 30% return. We're here to make 5-10 time returns. And like, I can't imagine the case for selling silver right now. So I don't know. I think we're on the same page on that. Jake, before we say goodbye, I want to ask you, for someone that's watching this right now, maybe they've invested for a long time, maybe they haven't, but for someone who has no experience in the commodities world, who wants to start getting exposure to precious metals, to the uraniums of the world, how do you recommend getting started? And this is the question I always find. I come from the mining industry. I've spent my whole career here. So I have a very unique way of looking at it. But from someone who comes from outside of this, a generalist investor that's really built a strong portfolio in this space, how do you think people should get started if they want to get their toes wet?
I think it depends on how serious you are. I mean, I think that this commodities market is going to be like the 70s. And I believe that, a lot of people can 10x their portfolios and their net worth in a relatively short period of time if they do it right. And so, I can't tell you exactly what you should do, but I'll tell you what I did. I realized that there was a really big opportunity. I got serious about it and I started treating it like a full-time job. And I started reading everything I could, signing up for everyone's newsletter, spending hours a day studying, taking it seriously because I realized there was a big return opportunity in that. I'm pretty much divided up. Only my 2 largest holdings are silver and uranium. And the way that I do it is I have a wide basket of stocks. I don't own any majors of anything. Almost everything I own is on the OTC. So I own a wide basket. My highest allocation of my portfolio, it can't be much more than 5 or 6%. One of the reasons that I did that is in studying a lot of the crappy stocks during the silver bull market do better than the good stocks. And, so I elected for my strategy to buy basically like, I don't know, maybe 30, if we're talking just silver, maybe like 30 silver stocks. I only own like 8 or 9 for my uranium portfolio. But
so you're spreading the risk there, but you're still getting that sort of exponential return potential that you.
I think it's a higher exponential return from what I've watched, it's a higher exponential return because, your random, Joe Dirt silver and stock in Nevada goes up 86% randomly or something, and so mine is to get a wide web. That's my own personal strategy. And, I would say if you're serious, you better not wait too much longer. I don't see 2 years later in any of these commodities. There being the opportunity that there is right now.
No, we've had this talk around the office before, but like, I think in 5 to 10 years time, we're going to be looking back at the commodity space as how we looked at tech for the last 10 years, as this area that was so hyperbolic and so many people made so much money, and the people that were well positioned early on. And silver, we've said this ad nauseum, is one of the places you can still really, really do that.
Yeah,
All right.
and uranium market's only a $18 billion market cap for like all, and I could be butchering those numbers, but for all the equities, there's only 64 publicly traded uranium equities. And silver's the same way. You probably know more about silver's market cap, but these are tiny. They're not going to stay like this forever.
No, I know. And we started a multi 7-figure uranium fund about 2.5 years ago. And we bought about a third of the sector. And we're up getting close to about 100% now over the last couple of years. And I really think like we're just the tip of the iceberg for that space as well.
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting one. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I appreciate it.
Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't? Anything you'd like to say to our audience?
Just the only thing there's pretty much all your guests are probably way smarter than me on this subject, but like, I'm just a regular guy, I mean, the biggest criticism I get on my YouTube channel, is people want me to cut my hair. So I'm just a regular guy. And, if you doubt you're this technical savant and all these things, I don't think that it matters that much in a bull market. I think if you spread your risk wide, you pick the right sectors to go into, I think there's an incredible opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jake. And ladies and gents, thanks for watching. That is Jake Ducey. Find him on Twitter at Jake Ducey Author, or do check out his YouTube channel, which is I Love Prosperity. That's a good name. All right. Thanks, Jake.
Cool. Thanks, Jamie.